your Bibles, please open them to 1 Samuel chapter 9. And we have 4 weeks left in our series through the first 12 chapters of 1 Samuel we're calling Influence. And now last week when we looked at chapter 8, I told you that chapter 8 is the most transitional chapter in the entire Old Testament. Because up from the beginning through chapter 7 of 1 Samuel, Israel is a theocracy, meaning God is their king. But beginning today in chapter 9, they move from a theocracy to a monarchy. They now have human kings. In fact, today we'll see the first of 41 different kings that they will have. Chapter 8 that we looked at last week is the transition between the two. What causes them to go from a theocracy to a monarchy? And the answer is because the people were demanding a king. They were demanding a king. Now, why did they want a king? All bad reasons. Number one, because they wanted to be just like all the other nations around them. Not a good reason to do anything. And number two, they wanted a king who would fight their battles for them. It was a lack of trust in God who had been the one fighting their battles for them. But the other problem was it wasn't the right time. You see, it's not that having a king was necessarily bad. Back in Deuteronomy chapter 17, we learned that God made provision for Israel in the promised land to one day have a king. That's not a bad thing. The problem was it wasn't the right time. Israel wasn't simply saying, give us a king. They were saying, give us a king now. And remember what God did. God said, okay, I'll give you what you want, but know the consequences. Because I'm going to give you the type of king you want, not the type of king that I want to give you, but the type of king you want, it's going to be bad. That king is going to take. It's all he's going to do. And the people said, that's okay. We still want a king. And so God told Samuel, give them what they want. And we're going to see that happening today. Today, Samuel is going to anoint the first king of Israel. And it's an amazing story how God brings together this man named Saul, who will be king, and Samuel the prophet. And that's why I've entitled the message, When a Donkey Leads to a King. Because that's what God going to use. He's going to use a donkey to lead Saul to Samuel, where he'll be anointed as king. So with that in mind, let me begin reading in 1 Samuel chapter 9 and verse number 1. And here's what it says. Now there was a man of Benjamin whose name, why did that come on? All right. There was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Berchorath, the son of Aphiah, the son of a Benjamite. He was a mighty man of valor. And he had a son, and it's his son who will become the first king, whose name was Saul. And what's the first thing we learn about Saul? He was a choice and handsome man, to which I know everyone in the room is asking, how handsome was he? And we see the answer. There was not a more handsome person than he among all the sons of Israel. Now, just a side note, you may be interested to know that 15 years ago, when the search team here at E-Free was looking for a new lead pastor, this was the profile, the verse they used to find that pastor. I've been waiting 6 months to say that, but nonetheless. And what else do we learn about him? And from his shoulders and up, he was taller than any of the people. All right, let's look at the description of Saul, the first king of Israel. And here's what you're going to see. He's exactly the type of king the people would want. However, he is a polar opposite to the king God wanted to be their first king, a man by the name of David, who will become their second king. So look at the description of Saul. Number one, he's from the tribe of Benjamin. Now, why is that a problem? Here's why. He's not from the right tribe. You see, back in Genesis 49, When Jacob is about to die and he blesses his sons, he says the scepter, the right to rule, the kingship, will not depart from Judah. His son Judah, that tribe, that's where the king was supposed to come from. Saul is not from Judah, he's from Benjamin. David will be from Judah, as will down his lineage, Jesus himself, the Lion of Judah. But Saul isn't even from the right tribe. What else do we learn about him? He was born into a wealthy and influential family. His dad, it said, was a mighty man of valor, influence. He was tall. How tall was he? Taller than any other person in Israel. Now, don't think of a 7-foot-plus person. Anthropologists and archaeologists have determined by studying skeletal remains that the average height of a man in that culture in that day was 5'6". In other words, if I lived back then in that culture, I would be taller than over half the men. So when it says that Saul was a head and shoulders taller, it doesn't mean a giant. He's probably about 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in there. But not only that, he's very, very handsome. He's the most handsome man in Israel. And that's why there's many ladies this morning going, I have a new favorite character in the Bible. It's now Saul, right? The most handsome man. He is tall, dark, and handsome. That's the only way you can describe him. He's the guy that could stand in front of the magic mirror every day and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And they would say, you, Saul, you're the most handsome man in Israel. And it says he's in his prime. It says he was a choice man. Age-wise, he's in his prime. Now that is a description of exactly what the people would want in a king. But what's missing? Look closely at the description. It talks about his heritage. It talks about his economics. It talks about his physical appearance. It talks about his age. But what's missing? Nothing about the heart. Nothing about his spiritual life at all. He is the polar opposite of David. Remember when Samuel goes to the home of Jesse to anoint the next king of Israel? All he knows is it's going to be one of Jesse's sons, and he doesn't realize it's going to be the youngest son, David. When he sees Eliab, the oldest son, he goes, that's got to be it. He's tall, he's dark, he's handsome, just like Saul. And remember what God says to Samuel? I haven't picked Eliab. Don't look at the outward appearance. God doesn't look at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart, and God has picked someone to be king that has a good heart. So Saul is going to be the polar opposite of the king that God wanted to be the first king. But God's going to give the people what they want. Sometimes the way God disciplines us is to actually give us what we want. So for this to happen, God has to take Saul and he has to take Samuel, and they have to meet. They have to have an encounter where the prophet Samuel can anoint Saul the first king of Israel. So how does God make this happen? It's what we would call, and you see it all through the Bible, a divine appointment. That's what he uses. So notice what it says in verse 3. Here's how he does it. He's going to use donkeys. Now the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. So Kish said to his son Saul, take now with you one of the servants. Arise, go search for the donkeys. So Saul passed through the hill country of Ephraim, couldn't find the donkeys. He passed through the land of Shalashah, but they did not find them. They passed through the land of Shalim, but they were not there. Then he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but the donkeys were not there either. Now, notice what God is doing. God is setting up a divine appointment. What is a divine appointment? Remember this, it has 4 aspects. It's when God gets you at the right place, at the right time, to meet the right person, to have the right conversation. Right place, right time, right person, right conversation. okay? He wants to get Saul at the right place, at the right time, to meet the right person, Samuel, to have the right conversation. You're going to be king. He's setting up a divine appointment. And what does God use to get Saul to this divine appointment? What does God use to get him at the right place at the right time to meet the right person to have the right conversation? Answer, he uses a lost donkey. That's what he uses. Now, remember a few weeks ago, we saw how God commanded the cows that were pulling the cart, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and they went right into Israel. And we talked about how God commands even animals, creation, and animals obey him. Remember that? It's another indication of this. You know what God does? God speaks to the donkeys and says, I want you to split, take off. The donkeys get away. They run away. And he leads the donkeys to go somewhere where Saul can't easily find them. In fact, we're going to see that he's been searching for 3 days. Can't find them. Now, why does God lead the donkeys to run away from home and to go somewhere where they couldn't be found? Because he was setting up a divine appointment. He wanted to get Saul at the right place at the right time to be the right person, to have the right conversation. And here's what sticks out to me. I think it's the most exciting part of the text. Here's what sticks out to me. What does God use to work in our lives? Listen, God sets up divine appointments for you and I every single week to get us at the right place at the right time to meet the right person to have the right conversation. He does it every single week. What does he use to get us there? Answer, ordinary things. I mean, what's more ordinary than a donkey? He uses ordinary things. I think sometimes the reason we miss God's working in our lives is because we're always looking for the mystical, always looking for the experiential, always looking for the supernatural. And the number one way God works in our life on a regular basis is through ordinary things. God sets up divine appointments for you and I all the time. You know what he uses to get us there? Ordinary things. Ever been running late because you can't find your keys? Pretty ordinary, huh? Or you can't find your phone? Ever been walking out to go somewhere, you got just enough time to get there and your kid pukes? That's pretty ordinary, huh? Or there's construction? Ladies and gentlemen, God is just as powerful when he works through the ordinary things in your life as when he works through the supernatural. And that's what he does here. He uses the ordinary things to get Saul at the right place at the right time, to meet the right person, to have the right conversation. So notice what happens, verse 5. When Saul and his servant came to the land of Zuph, Saul said to a servant who was with him, "Come, let us return, or else my father will cease to be concerned about the donkeys and become anxious for us." Now, at this point, I see something really good in Saul. I think Saul does start well. He's not the right guy that God originally intended to be the first king, but he starts well. And one of the positives we see is this. He seems to have a genuine heart for his dad. They've been gone 3 days, we'll learn in a minute, looking for these donkeys. So Saul says to his servant, we can't find them, and I'm afraid that my dad's going to quit worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us. So we better go back home. So the servant replies and says, "Well, behold, before we do that, there's a man of God in this city." He's speaking as Samuel. He's held in high honor. Whatever he says comes from God, so it comes true. Let us go there to that city. Perhaps he can tell us about our journey. In other words, maybe he can tell us where the donkeys are since we can't find them. And so Saul says, verse 7 to his servant, "Well, behold, if we go, what shall we bring this man of God? For the bread is gone from our sack. We ate it all, and there's no present to bring to the man. What do we have?" Now, don't think of this as they want to pay him like he's a fortune teller. That's not what this is. In the culture of that day in the Middle East, and by the way, it's still that way today, whenever you went and you were talking to someone, it was always culturally acceptable to give them a small gift as a sign of honor or respect. That's what it was. They still do it today. When we would take our trips to Israel, we're there like 6 different times. When I would lead groups to Israel, different shop owners and people I meet, they would literally give me gifts just to say, hey, we just want to honor you because you bring groups over. By the way, with that said, we are in the initial stages of planning our next trip to Israel. It's going to be 2027. Don't know if it's going to be spring or summer yet. We're in the initial stages, but just keep that in the back of your mind. So he says, what should we bring to the man as a sign of respect? And the servant answered and said, well, I have in my hand 1/4 of a shekel of silver. Let's give that to him. Now, to show you that it's just a little token of respect, 1/4 of a shekel of silver in our monetary day today would be less than $10. Okay, it's not something significant at all. It's just a sign of respect. So they go towards the city. Now look what happens next. God has used donkeys, lost donkeys, to get them this far. Now he's going to use a couple of gals who go out, young gals, to get water at the well. Look what happens. As they went up the slope to the city, they found young women going out to draw water, and they said, is the seer here? Now, by the way, the word seer is the same as prophet. It's another name for it. Is the prophet, the man of God, here? We hear he lives in this city. Is he here? Now, look at how specific their answer is. It's not just a quick, yes, he is. Look how specific the answer is. They answered, these young women, and said, he is. See, he's ahead of you. Hurry now. He's coming to the city today, for the people have a sacrifice on the high places. As soon as you enter the city, you'll find him before he goes up there, for the people won't eat until he comes, because he must first bless the sacrifice. Afterward, those who are invited will eat. So go in, you'll find him. That's a lot of explanation, isn't it? They don't just say, yeah, he's in the city. They give this long explanation to them. Now, I find that intriguing. And maybe I'm reading into it, could be. But here's what I know about the culture of that day. In the culture of that day, the Jewish culture, it was not acceptable for a young woman to talk to a man in public. It wasn't acceptable. Especially if that was a stranger, if that man was a stranger. Young women would not do that. That was socially unacceptable. But when Saul asked, hey, is the prophet in town today? They don't just nod. They don't just point. They give this long answer. Let us help you. Let us help you. Let us help. Why do they do that? Well, what have we learned about Saul? He's the best looking dude they've ever seen. No guy in their town looks like him. No guy's as good looking. No guy's as tall, dark, and handsome. Yes, we will give you directions. Can we also follow you on Facebook? I mean, that's what they're doing right there, right? I can just imagine as Saul walks away, these young ladies look at each other going, is it extra hot in the desert today? I mean, that's what's going on. It's incredible. It's incredible. So they go into the city. And it says in verse 14, as they came into the city, Samuel was coming out toward them. The divine appointment is about to happen, isn't it? God is about to bring Saul to the right place at the right time, to meet the right person, to have the right conversation. But God did something in advance that Saul doesn't know about. Look at verse 15. Now, the day before this divine appointment, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel, saying, about this time. Remember, a divine appointment, God gets you at the right place at the what? Right time. Timing is important to God. About this time tomorrow, I'm going to send you a man from the land of Benjamin. You're going to anoint him to be prince over my people Israel. He'll deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. So God, the day before this divine appointment, tells Samuel something Saul doesn't know. I'm going to send to you a man from Benjamin. He's the one I picked. I want you to anoint him as king. Saul doesn't know that. So now as we get to verse number 17, Saul and Samuel meet. And the only way I could describe this is Saul throughout this encounter has to be going, that's weird. And then, that's really weird. And then, this can't get any weirder. Look at it. Verse number 17. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said to him, behold, the man of whom I spoke to you, the one who will rule over my people. That's him. By the way, that word rule, it's not the normal word for kingship. It's a word that really means to restrain. It's really showing he's not going to be a good king. He's going to ultimately be a bad king. Verse 18. Saul approached Samuel in the gate and said, excuse me, sir, please tell me where the prophet's house is. He doesn't know what Samuel looks like. He can't look up his picture on social media. And Samuel answered Saul and said, I'm him. You're talking to him. I'm the guy you're looking for. Now, notice this. Before Saul ever has a chance to speak, before Saul ever has the opportunity to say, hey, we're looking for my dad's lost donkeys. Any chance you can ask God where they are for us? And he'll tell you, we need to find them. Before he ever has a chance to say anything, look what Samuel says. Go up before me to the high place, for you will eat at the feast with me today. You'll spend the night with me, and in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that's on your mind. And Saul's got to be thinking, that's weird. I just want to know where my dad's donkeys are. I wasn't expecting dinner and a movie. That's not what I was expecting, right? But Samuel goes on. It gets weirder. And says, now remember, Saul hasn't said a word yet. Samuel says, oh, by the way, as for your donkeys, which were lost 3 days ago. He's been looking for them for 3 days. Don't set your mind on them. Don't worry about them. They have been found. And Saul's got to be going, this is really weird. I didn't mention the donkeys. How does he know I've been looking for donkeys for 3 days? This is really weird. But then it gets weirder. The next thing Samuel says to him is this. And for whom is all that is desirable in Israel? Who is it that all of Israel is going to desire? Is it not you and your father's house? And Saul's got to be thinking, me? What special blessing is coming on me? In fact, notice what Saul says in verse 21. He replies, am I not a Benjamite of the smallest tribes of the Israel, and my family the least of the families of the tribe? Why then do you speak to me in this way? Now, I see something else about Saul. Remember, I told you, I think Saul started well. He had a good heart for his dad, no doubt about that. But he also seems to have genuine humility. Genuine humility. He's going, dude, why are you going to say I'm having this great blessing? Who am I? All of this is happening in Saul's life. It goes from weird to weirder to weirdest. Well, in verses 22 through 27, we won't take time to read them. Saul goes up to the feast. It gets even weirder there. He eats there. He goes to Samuel's home. He spends the night sleeping on the roof. In the morning, they're packing up, getting ready to go. And Samuel says to Saul, hey, tell your servant to go ahead of you. I want to share something with you privately. So the servant goes on ahead, and look what Samuel does in chapter 10, verse 1. Then Samuel took the flask of oil and poured it on Saul's head, kissed him, and said, has not the Lord anointed you a ruler over his inheritance, his people? So what does Samuel do before Saul leaves? He anoints him as the first king of Israel. Now, by the way, this is the very first time that a person is anointed with oil who is not a priest. Up until this time, you only anointed priests. Saul now will be anointed. You know why? Because it's showing us that the king is also to look after the spiritual life of the people, just like the priests. Now, what Samuel does next is he said, Saul, let me tell you exactly what's going to happen on your way home. And he gives them very specific predictions. He says, on your way home, you're going to meet 2 men. They're going to tell you where the lost donkeys are. Then you're going to meet 3 more men. They're going to give you some food. And then you're going to meet a group of prophets who will be prophesying, and the Spirit of the Lord is going to come upon you, and you're going to prophesy as well, and God's going to give you a new heart. And all of that happens just like Samuel says. All of it. And it's done for this purpose. This is God showing Saul, I am the one behind all this, Saul. I am the one orchestrating this. If you will just trust me, if you will follow me, if you will obey me, I will bless you as king. God is showing great mercy here, even though that's not the guy he originally wanted to be the first king. He's showing great mercy. I'm behind it, Saul. Trust me, follow me, obey me, and everything happens just like Samuel said it would. And Saul begins with a good heart. Saul started well, but it doesn't take long, and that disappears. It seems to just be an emotional start, because Saul now develops a pattern of turning his back on God, a pattern of disobeying God's commands at every turn. And it gets so bad that by the time we get to chapter 13, God sends Samuel to Saul with this message. Look at it. Samuel said to Saul, you have acted foolishly as king. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel. God would have blessed you. Even though you weren't the guy he picked to be the first king, he would have blessed you in his mercy and grace had you only obeyed. But because you haven't, verse 14, now your kingdom will not endure. Instead, the Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people, because you've not kept what the Lord commanded you. And God is going to take the kingdom away from Saul, and he's going to give it to the one he originally intended to be the first king, David. So what is it we learn about Saul? He started well, didn't he? Good heart towards his dad, genuine humility, seems to begin with a good heart spiritually. But though he started well, he did not end well. And folks, here's the principle we learn from the life of Saul. Listen, it's not how you start that really matters. It's how you finish that really counts. Saul started well, but he finished bad. In fact, when we get to the end of Saul's life, he will admit that in his own words. Look what he says towards the end of his life in 1 Samuel 26, verse 21. He says this, I have played the fool and committed serious error. That is Saul's description of his own life at the end of his life. He started well, but he did not finish well. Now let's contrast that with another Saul in the Bible. King Saul in the Old Testament started well but did not finish well. But in the New Testament, we learn about another Saul, who, by the way, was also from the tribe of Benjamin. In fact, chances are good his parents named him after the most famous Benjamite in Israel history, King Saul. So now you have this New Testament Saul. Guess what? He does not start well at all. I mean, King Saul started well. Not this guy. This guy starts hating Jesus, hating Christians, feeling it is his calling from God to wipe out Christianity. He goes on a passionate pursuit to arrest and or kill every single follower of Jesus he can find. He did not start well. But one day when he's heading to Damascus to arrest and kill more Christians, he has an encounter with the risen Jesus, and he becomes a believer. And suddenly this New Testament Saul has his name changed. We know him as the Apostle Paul. He did not start well at all, folks. But guess what? He finished well. He finished so well. At the end of Old Testament Saul's life, he said, I played the fool, I've committed serious error. But at the end of the New Testament Saul's life, here are his words at the ending of his life, recorded in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse number 7, which says this, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. Old Testament Saul started well, did not finish well. New Testament Saul started bad, but finished good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not how you start that matters. It's how you finish that counts. And that's good news. And here's why. Because there's not a person in this room who can change the way you started. You can't change one thing about your past. You can't even change what you had for breakfast this morning. But guess what? No matter what your past has been like, you can still change how you end. I like the quote from John Maxwell, who said this, though you cannot go back and make a brand new start, my friend, anyone can start from now and make a brand new end. What a great quote. It reminds me of the story of William Borden, heir to the Borden dairy estate. His future was set. Great fortune. When he graduated from high school, as a graduation gift, high school graduation gift, his parents gave him an around-the-world trip. My parents gave me a Hallmark card, but that's okay. An around-the-world trip. And on the trip, God broke his heart when he saw the amount of spiritual and physical suffering. And on that trip, he wrote a letter back to his parents saying, I've decided to walk away from the family business. I believe God has called me to be a missionary to China. When he got home, he was met with great pressure. His family, his friends going, how could you do this? Your future's set. This is so silly. Why give it all up? And amidst that pressure, he opened the front cover of his Bible, and on the blank page, he wrote two words, no reserves. I know what God's called me to do. I'm going to pursue it. He enrolled in seminary at Yale University, and his education years were tough, but he made it through. They took longer than he thought they would. And all along the way, he kept hitting resistance and resistance and resistance. Why are you doing this? Why acting so foolishly? Why are you wasting your life? And he was tempted just to go back to the family business. So he opened up his Bible. And on that blank page, underneath the words, no reserves, he wrote two more words. No retreats. I know what God's called me to do. I'm going to move forward. He packed his bags and set sail for China, much to his family's chagrin. But he had a long stopover in Egypt for language study. And while he was in Egypt, he contracted spinal meningitis. And at the age of 25, he died before ever making it to China. And when his family got the news, they thought, what a waste. What a waste. Several months later, his mom received his travel chest with all of his belongings that he had with him in Egypt. And with tears streaming down her face, thinking about how he wasted his life, she's going through his chest of belongings and clothes, and she finds his Bible. And as she opens the front cover of the Bible, she discovers that underneath the words "no reserves" and "no retreats," just a few days before he died, William Borden wrote 2 additional words: no regrets. You and I, one day, sooner than we probably think, will get to the end of our life. I wonder, when it comes to our walk of faith, will we be able to say no regrets? Because, friends, the only way you'll be able to say no regrets when you get there is if today you can say no reserves, no retreats. And at the end of our life, we either, like Old Testament Saul, will say, I have played the fool and committed serious sin. Or we will be able to say, like the New Testament Saul, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. It's not how you start that really matters. It's how you finish that counts. Would you bow with me, please, for prayer? So, Father, help us to learn from the negative influence of Saul. Help us to learn our need to focus on how we end. And for those that are here today who maybe haven't started well, or maybe started well but have kind of got off track, I pray that today we would say, beginning today, I will focus on making a brand new end. So help us to live our lives today for you with no reserves and no retreats, so that when we reach the end of our life, we can say with William Borden, no regrets. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.